If photography feels harder than it should, if you feel like you're always behind, if every shoot feels slightly chaotic, even though you care a lot. It might not be your talent. It might be that you don't actually have a workflow. And without one, even good photographers feel scattered. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a simple photography workflow you can actually use, especially if you're a beginner. So you stop reinventing everything every time you pick up your camera. If you're new to photography, or even just a few years in, there's something that almost nobody tells you clearly. Photography doesn't feel chaotic because you're bad at it. It feels chaotic because you're making too many decisions in too many categories at the same time. And your brain hates that. When you don't have a workflow, every shoot feels like this. What lens should I use? Where should I stand? How do I pose them? What if the light changes? What settings should I start with? When do I email the client? What do I do after I deliver the gallery? Did I forget something? That's not creativity. That's cognitive overload. And here's the hard part. When you're a beginner, you assume that chaos means you're not cut out for this. But most of the time, chaos just means you don't have structure yet. And structure is learned. It's not personality, it's not talent, it's not confidence, it's sequence. Let's pause there for a second. If photography has felt messy, overwhelming, or unpredictable, it doesn't automatically mean you lack skill. It often means you lack order. There's a difference. Now here's where beginners get trapped. When photography feels chaotic, most people try to fix it by learning more. More settings, more posing tricks, more lighting setups, more gear, more tutorials. But learning more without structure just increases decision load. Imagine trying to cook a new recipe while also redesigning the kitchen layout every time you cook. That's what beginner photography feels like without workflow. You're solving everything from scratch every single shoot, and that's exhausting. This is the moment where people usually think, I just need more practice. Practice matters, but unstructured practice reinforces chaos. Structured practice builds skill. That's the difference. So what is a workflow actually? A workflow is not a fancy business term. It's not automation. It's not software. It's simply the predictable order in which things happen. Before the shoot, during the shoot, after the shoot. That's it. And beginners almost never define those three stages intentionally. They just react. So let's simplify this immediately. Every photography workflow, no matter your niche, has three phases: pre-shoot, shoot, post-shoot. That's it. You don't need 10 steps. You need clarity inside those three buckets. Let's start with why pre-shoot matters more than most beginners realize. When you don't have a pre-shoot routine, everything spills into the shoot itself. You're making exposure decisions while also calming nerves. You're adjusting settings while also trying to direct people. You're second-guessing your lens choice while also worrying about client expectations. You're stacking decisions. That's why you feel behind, because you are. You're doing work late instead of early. A simple workflow shifts decisions upstream. It says, what can I decide before the camera comes out? That single question changes everything. Before a shoot, you can decide which lens you're starting with, what lighting scenario you're aiming for, where your first location will be, what your exposure baseline is likely to be, how you'll open the session. If you've never thought about your opening before, that alone will reduce anxiety. Beginners often walk into sessions hoping momentum will magically appear. Professionals walk in with an opening sequence, not because they're robotic, because it reduces uncertainty. Let's talk about the shoot phase. This is where beginners feel the most exposed because this is where performance pressure hits. If you don't have a simple shooting structure, your brain is doing too much. Composition, exposure, direction, client emotion, light shifts, background distractions, that's 6 categories minimum. Your brain can't optimize all of them at once, so it panics. And panic feels like, I'm not good at this. But really, it's overload. A simple shoot workflow means you prioritize in layers. For example, first 5 minutes, stabilize exposure and light. Nothing else matters yet. Next phase, lock basic composition. Keep poses simple. No complexity. Then add variation, change angle, adjust detail. You don't solve everything at once, you sequence it. That's workflow, and then we get to post-shoot. This is where beginners quietly sabotage themselves because there's no plan. Files sit, edits drag. Delivery gets delayed. Emails feel awkward. Confidence drops. And then you start the next shoot already feeling behind. Without a post-shoot routine, photography feels like open loops everywhere. Your brain never rests. A simple post-shoot workflow might look like within 24 hours, cull, within 48 hours, batch edit, within X days, send preview, within Y days, deliver final gallery. Simple, predictable, repeatable. Notice what's happening here. We're not adding complexity, we're reducing variables, and that reduction is what creates relief. If this is already helping you reframe photography a little bit, pause for a second and tell me in the comments which phase feels the most chaotic for you right now. Pre-shoot, during, or post-shoot. That feedback actually helps me shape future videos. Now I want to address something important. Some of you might be thinking, this sounds basic. Yes, it is. That's the point. Workflow should feel boring because boring is sustainable. If your process feels dramatic every time, it's not a process. It's improvisation. Improvisation is fun sometimes, but it's not stable. And beginners don't need more excitement. They need fewer surprises. Let's do a pause plus reframe moment here. You are not overwhelmed because photography is too advanced for you. You're overwhelmed because you're trying to be advanced without a foundation. That's not a character flaw. That's a sequence problem, and sequence can be fixed. When you build even a very simple 3-phase workflow, something shifts. You stop wondering what happens next. And when you stop wondering what happens next, your brain can actually focus on seeing. And seeing is photography. Not panic, not scrambling, not second guessing, seeing. If you've ever had a session where everything clicked and you felt calm and in control, even briefly, that wasn't magic. It was temporary structure. What we're doing in this video is making that structure intentional and repeatable. If this direction resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because the next few videos this month build on this exact foundation. We're going to talk about decision fatigue. We're going to talk about what to do after a shoot so you don't fall behind. We're building stability this month, but it starts here. It starts with accepting that chaos isn't proof you're failing. It's proof you haven't defined your order yet, and that's fixable. Now that we've talked about why things feel chaotic, let's make this practical. I'm going to give you a very simple, beginner-friendly workflow model, not a 17-step business system, not a complicated automation map, just something you can actually remember. 5 steps. That's it. If you write these down and start using them consistently, your stress level will drop almost immediately. Here are the 5 stages. Clarify the shoot. Prepare the environment. Stabilize before you create. Create in layers. Close the loop. Let's walk through each one slowly. Step 1. Clarify the shoot. Most beginner chaos starts before the camera even comes out. You haven't defined what this session is actually about. You just show up. That's not clarity, that's hoping. So before any shoot, paid, unpaid, practice, friend session, anything, you ask yourself, what is the goal of this shoot? Not the vague goal, not get good photos. Specific. Is this about clean portraits? Movement? Practicing backlighting? Learning to pose couples? Testing a new lens? Practicing natural light indoors? One focus, not 5. When you don't clarify the shoot, you try to improve everything at once. And when you try to improve everything at once, you improve nothing deeply. If you're a beginner, you are allowed to narrow the goal. Actually, you need to. So before your next session, I want you to write down one sentence. This shoot is about what? Fill in the blank. That's step one. Already your brain has fewer directions to manage. Step two, prepare the environment. This is where a lot of anxiety lives. You're walking into unpredictability, but unpredictability shrinks when preparation increases. Preparation doesn't mean perfection. It means removing unnecessary decisions. Before the shoot, decide. What lens are you starting with? What lighting condition are you aiming for? What location are you starting in? What time of day gives you predictable light? Beginners often walk into sessions and then start evaluating the entire environment in real time. That's a lot. Instead, pre-choose. If you're outdoors, pick the starting direction of light. If you're indoors, pick the window. If you're in a studio, pick the modifier. You don't need 10 lighting options, you need one stable starting point. This is especially important for confidence. Because when the first few minutes feel steady, your brain relaxes. And when your brain relaxes, your eye improves. If this part feels chaotic for you, that's normal. Environment preparation is one of the biggest relief levers in photography. Step 3. Stabilize before you create. This is the part almost nobody talks about, and it's why so many beginners spiral in the first 5 minutes. You start shooting before stabilizing, stabilize first, create second. What does stabilization mean? It means lock exposure, lock white balance, confirm focus accuracy, check background distractions, confirm you like the light direction. Before you try to direct someone into a creative pose, before you try to capture emotion, before you try to get the shot, you stabilize the technical baseline. Think of this like leveling the camera tripod before composing. If you don't level first, every adjustment feels unstable. This is where I see beginners panic. They shoot 5 frames. Exposure is off, they adjust. Pose is awkward, they adjust. Focus misses, they adjust. Subject feels uncomfortable. They adjust. Everything at once. Instead, slow down. First 2 minutes. Just dial exposure. That's it. You are allowed to take technically boring frames at the beginning. That's not wasted time. That's foundation time. If this resonates, tell me in the comments. Do you rush the first few minutes of a session? Most people do. And that's fixable. Step 4. Create in layers. Now we get to the creative part, but here's the key. Creativity works best when layered, not dumped all at once. So instead of trying to change pose, change location, change angle, change lens, adjust settings, and direct emotion, all in the same moment, you layer. Layer 1, basic pose, clean composition, stable light. Layer 2, micro adjust hands. Micro adjust chin. Micro adjust spacing. Layer 3. Change angle. Step closer, step back, shift height. Layer 4. Add motion. Add expression. Add interaction. You build complexity. You don't start with it. This one change alone will make you look more confident as a photographer because you're not flailing for variation. You're building it. And clients feel that. Even practice subjects feel that. Layered creation reduces chaos because your brain knows what comes next. It's not guessing. It's sequencing. Step 5. Close the loop. This is the step that determines whether you feel behind tomorrow. After the shoot, you do not drift. You close the loop. That means transfer files immediately. Back up. Set a culling deadline. Set an editing deadline. Send a communication touchpoint if needed. Even if you're a beginner and this is unpaid practice, create a mini post-shoot ritual. Because what makes photography feel heavy isn't shooting, it's unfinished business. Open loops drain creative energy. Closed loops restore it. If you want workflow relief, this is where it lives. Not in buying another lens, not in watching 10 more tutorials, in closing the loop consistently. Let's zoom out for a second. If you implement just these 5 steps, Clarify, prepare, stabilize, layer, close. You've already removed 60% of beginner chaos. And notice what we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about advanced lighting setups, complicated posing systems, 10-step email automations, expensive gear, because none of that solves disorganization. Workflow is about order, not complexity. Now here's something important. You don't have to perfect this, you just have to repeat it. Repetition turns workflow into instinct, and instinct feels like confidence. Confidence is usually just familiarity with sequence. Let that sink in. If this framework already feels lighter than how you've been operating, that's a good sign. You don't need more information, you need consistent order. In the next section, we're going to talk about why beginners abandon workflow too early, how to make this sustainable, and how to build this into something you don't have to think about every time. And we'll also talk about where tools and systems actually fit, without turning this into overwhelm. If this video is helping you rethink how you approach shoots, hit subscribe. This month is very workflow focused, and each episode builds on the last. Section 3 is where we lock this in long term. Now that we've walked through the 5-step workflow, I want to zoom out, because here's the mistake beginners make once they understand structure. They try to perfect it immediately, and that's where workflow turns back into pressure. So let's slow this down. The goal of a simple workflow is not to make you rigid. It's not to make you robotic. It's not to remove creativity. It's to remove decision chaos. There's a difference. You don't need a complex system. You need a stable baseline. And stability is what allows creativity to expand. If every shoot feels like survival mode, you will burn out. Not because photography is too hard, but because your nervous system never gets a break. Workflow gives your nervous system a break. It tells your brain, I know what happens next. That single feeling changes your experience behind the camera. Let's do a quick pause plus reframe here. If photography has felt heavy lately, it might not be because you don't love it anymore. It might be because you've been carrying too many open decisions. Love doesn't disappear. Capacity gets overloaded, and structure increases capacity. Now let's talk about something subtle. A lot of beginner photographers believe that professionals are just more confident. But what you're actually seeing is reduced decision load. Professionals don't think about 40 things. They think about 5 things they've already sequenced. The rest is muscle memory. You are not behind. You are just earlier in building repetition. And repetition builds flow. Let's talk about sustainability for a second, because this is where most people quit. They have 3 chaotic shoots in a row. Editing piles up, emails feel awkward, they feel scattered, and they think, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for this. But here's what's actually happening. They never closed loops consistently. So stress compounds. And compounding stress feels like lack of talent. It's not. It's unstructured workload. That's fixable. Here's how you make this sustainable. You do not add complexity until simplicity feels boring. That's a rule. If your workflow still feels shaky, you don't add new lighting styles. If your post-shoot process still feels inconsistent, you don't add automation software. If your pre-shoot, your time shoot prep still feels rushed, you don't add advanced posing systems. You stabilize before you scale. That mindset alone will protect you from burnout. Now I want to address gear briefly, because beginners often think, if I just had better gear, this would feel smoother. Better gear can improve image quality. It does not reduce workflow chaos. A messy process with expensive gear is still messy. A simple process with basic gear feels calmer. And calm photographers make better decisions. Let's talk about where tools fit. Tools are accelerators. Workflow is foundation. If you build workflow first, tools help. If you skip workflow, tools amplify confusion. This is where something like a structured guide or system becomes useful, not as pressure, but as a reference. If you're realizing that your chaos has more to do with lack of structure than lack of talent, I created something specifically for that phase. The client workflow playbook isn't about hustle. It's about defining your sequence clearly so you stop improvising every shoot. You don't need it to apply what we talked about today. But if you want a deeper breakdown of how to structure pre-shoot, shoot, and post-shoot stages clearly and repeatably, that's what it's built for. The link is in the description. Use it if it supports you. Ignore it if you're still implementing the basics from this video. Either way, start with simplicity. Now let's move into the reflective beat. If you imagine yourself 6 months from now, which version of you feels lighter? The one still scrambling each session, or the one who knows what happens next? Workflow isn't glamorous. It doesn't make dramatic thumbnails, but it makes sustainable photographers, and sustainable photographers outlast talented but chaotic ones. That's not said to scare you. It's said to empower you. You don't have to be brilliant to succeed. You have to be repeatable, and repeatability is built, not inherited. Let me ask you something directly. If you had to pick one thing from today's video to implement immediately, what would it be? Clarifying your shoot, stabilizing before creating, closing the loop faster? Pick one. Comment it below. Commit publicly. That accountability matters. Because the difference between chaos and calm is rarely knowledge, it's consistency. And consistency starts small. As we move through March, we're going to layer this. Next week, we're talking about decision fatigue. Then we'll talk about what to do after a shoot so you don't fall behind. This month is about relief. Not hustle, not optimization. Relief. Because when photography feels manageable, it becomes enjoyable again. And when it becomes enjoyable again, you improve faster. So here's your closing thought. You are not chaotic. You are unsequenced. And sequencing is learnable. If this video helped you see your process differently, subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the workflow series. And if you want a structured breakdown you can reference while building this out, check the client workflow playbook in the description. Start simple. Repeat it. Let it get boring. And watch how much lighter photography feels.